there, this is Jake Sanderson, aka Snowman Cycling, and I'm back once again with another race recap video for you. And for those of you that like to see me suffer, this is the episode to watch, because this is quite literally a puke fest of a race as I tackle 9.5 kilometers of the Flamme route in Richmond against the mixed category field in the Electric Spirit Company pre-Pandial lunchtime race crit series, my favourite lunchtime crit series going. I'm going to tackle the mixed category field again in search of the victories. So this one is going to be 9.5 kilometers of the Flamme route in Richmond, so 2 laps of that. This is a race that I actually did yesterday. I still haven't recovered properly, but my PTSD is your can't miss TV. So as always, let's jump into this one. I will see you shortly in the pen, people. Okay guys, so here we go. Usually you know the drill, we'll start from the pen, but this time I had some problems with my recordings. We're already 1 minute in. Thankfully my partner came to the rescue, was able to restart my recording software and save the day. I couldn't have taken 2 races in 1 week that didn't record properly. And as you can see, there's a decent sized group already. As we go through the banner, the most of the group elects to deploy their power up. I'm going to use mine as well. Why not? Because we're going to get a couple more of those to use later on. So I'm not too concerned about holding on to one of them, especially the drafting boost. One of my least favourite power-ups, especially for the end game. So at this point, I'm just concerned about making sure that we're in this group, that none of these riders are able to get away from us. As you can see, there's a strong A rider on the front, Stoneman, who's setting the pace and making it so that the other mixed category riders in the group behind aren't going to get an easy run of it. And this is the point where we have our first bit of action as we hit this 4% little rise. One of those riders off the front, Zucchero, makes a go for it just as I was taking a sip of water. How cruel is that? So I didn't see him go off the front, and that means that... So I'm a little bit delayed in my reaction there. I should have responded a little bit quicker, but I get out of the saddle, I hit the watts, and I move up to Zucchero. So he's the one that's applying some pressure here for the bees. He's a really strong rider, as evidenced by his Zwift power profile, so I know that I can't let him get away, as is Zarame, the other B rider that comes to join the party. So I don't usually like to drag the rest of the group up to the rider, but I was able to accelerate and move up to him, and the rest of the group kind of came along with me. So I didn't really drag them up, but I wasn't going to let that guy get away at the front of the race. And as we can see, there are a few riders behind, including that A rider, so no doubt they're going to be trying to catch back on here. So I'm just going to sit at the back of this group. If these riders want to push the pace, I'm going to let them do it, but I'm going to make as much of an energy saving as possible here by sitting further back in the group, getting a lot of draft, and having to put out fewer watts than these riders on the front of the group, like Zucchero. And there's a C rider in this group as well, who's really, really strong. Stephen Chamberlain, who rides for Galaxy, he's a super strong C rider, and we'll see him at multiple points in this race on the front of this group trying to keep the pace high. And we've also got a D rider who's in this group, who's only a 45-50 kilo rider, who can do 4.3 watts per kilo for 20 minutes, but is somehow still a D. I guess it's due to their weight, but that kind of tells you everything that's wrong with the Zwift categories at the moment. And I think that the C rider Stephen is trying to keep the pace high to stop the C rider further back being able to reconnect to this group. But unfortunately for Stephen, that C rider has Stoneman, the A rider, to tow him back up to this group. So it looks to me like that A rider Stoneman doesn't have the best sprint or fast twitch power in the world, but he's got a good TT time trial ability to keep that power ticking over. And as we can see further back as well, there's another A rider, L-E-S-D-I, Lesty, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that one, but they actually did the highest power for anybody in this race. I think it was 4.4 or 4.5 watts per kilo average for the whole race, but because they were on their own and they weren't drafting anybody, they finished so far back, it's not even funny. So that just goes to show you how important it is to be able to get into the draft at the start of a race, use a bit of acceleration, and make sure you're with the front group. Because if you're not, even if you're doing the best power, the most power, the highest power of everybody in the whole race, you're still going to finish 45 seconds back from the main pack, and all those sandbagging sprinters like me who know how to surf the wheels and save some watts are going to beat you. So maybe that A rider wants to try and make sure he's further up the front next time. And we can see here as we're over halfway through this race, the pace hasn't been particularly high, but don't worry, that is going to change very, very shortly. The A rider and the C rider behind are going to try and get back onto this group, and they're making a really good go of it. Personally, I'm not too concerned. There's no need for me to work in this group. I'm not really worried about either of those 2 riders behind, because if they were able to move up and had a sort of acceleration that I was worried about in the sprint finish, well, they would have closed this gap a lot earlier. So quite often, you're able to tell things about the riders in the race around you by how they react and by how they respond to the attacks that are going on. So we know we're able to tell Stoneman's got a really good TT. I'm not too worried about him in the sprint finish. And remember, if you're looking to improve your sprinting prowess, get some sprint tips, sprint tactics and sprint techniques under your belt for the end of race finishes, you can always come and join me on the SNOWcial Sprint and Spin Fridays at 6 o'clock on the Zwift official calendar. I'm often the yellow beacon, but if I'm not, I'm always there. We have competitions to see who can get the fastest sprint, and it's also a great social ride where you can roll around and enjoy some nice, easy riding if that's your preference. But as we can see there, they do eventually manage to get back on, so really good work from those riders behind trying to catch back onto the grid. But you can just see how much energy it is that you use trying to close those gaps. You're so much better off using that energy to stay in the front group and then recover afterwards, because when these guys reconnect to this group, guess what? I'm almost totally recovered and they're still really hurting. So really difficult position for those guys to be on. If you catch back onto a group like this, you get less recovery than everyone else. And as we come back around to this rise, this is where it's all going to kick off from here to the finish. This does not calm down from this moment here. I was a little bit slow to respond again. I was watching this on a smaller screen because I had some problems with my stream and I wanted to make sure it recorded. And that kind of meant it was harder to tell when people were going off the front, so I've learned from that for next time. This is quite a way that I have to respond to get onto Zarame's wheel. He makes a really good acceleration. I'm guessing he feels he hasn't got the best sprint, so he doesn't want to leave it till the end of this race to make his move. So this is a great acceleration from him. A really strong move. It hurt to get onto his wheel. I knew I had to respond immediately. I couldn't let him get away. And as we can see, the riders behind are trying to respond as well, but they're taking a little bit longer about it. Gives me a bit of an inclination as to how the sprint might go if we get there. And I'm not going to offer Zarame upper wheel. I don't care if we stay away from this group behind or not. I just don't want him to get away from me. That's my only concern in this race. I'm not bothered about working in a breakaway with anybody. I don't care about staying away from any of the riders behind. I fancy my chances in the sprint if it comes to it. And that just means the responsibility is on me to make sure that these riders, none of these riders, are able to get away. I can't win the sprint if I'm only in the second group. So we'll see what happens, but that means when these sorts of moves happen and Stoneman comes ploughing through with his power, I'm the one that has to make that move, get onto his wheel and stop him from getting away. So as a sprinter, sometimes you have to take those hits. It needs to be you that closes the wheel. If nobody else wants to do it, you don't want that rider to get away, you're going to have to use some of your energy for the sprint later on to make sure they don't get away. And the power slightly lulls here as everybody takes a little bit of a breather with 1.3k to the finish. But the final 3.5 minutes of this race were an average power of over 5 watts per kilo for me. Just showing you how brutal the last 2.5 kilometers of this race were. With that acceleration we just had to make to get onto the front, and then with the sprint finish coming up any time from now. Keeping my eyes on these riders around me. If anybody makes a move like Stoneman did, Zarame did, or the other riders Zucchero did at the start, I'm going to counter them, I'm going to follow them, and I'm going over the top of them. We're into the final kilometre or so now, and that means that anybody gives it a go, I'm going to make sure that I go, because I know I have enough power in the tank to go over the top of them and keep it to the finish line. When we're 2.5k out, I don't really want to do that if I can avoid it. I want to make sure I counter people until this sort of range. So we're in the danger zone now. I'm keeping a close eye on all of these riders. If anybody even twitches at orange numbers, 8 watts per kilo, I'm going to be on their wheel, I'm going to go over the top of them. But if we're given the choice, if these riders let me make the decision myself as to when we're going to go, we're going to go at the end of this road as we go around the bend. Ali, everything we've got, out the saddle, bigger power numbers as we can possibly muster, and see if we can get the win against this extremely strong mixed category field. So I know at this point I've got a decent chance of the win. So it's not going to be easy to spike that power, but here we go, everything we've got. We managed to hit over 1,000 watts. That's always the benchmark, and then we spring it back up again to nearly 1,000 again. Everything we've got out the saddle here. You can tell from the look on my face, this is absolute agony. I'm gritting my teeth. I am really suffering here, but I can't give in if I want to win this race. The riders behind me give it everything they've got, and at this point with about 80 meters to go, I know the race is mine. I'm able to sit up, celebrate, enjoy my handiwork. That was absolutely savage. The power there was really nasty. It was only 3.5 watts per kilo average, but my normalized power after this race was 280 watts. That is 4.65 watts per kilo for 15 minutes. That is a huge power differential. Really nasty. Really takes the power out of the legs. Felt like I didn't have a single carb or bit of sugar left in my body, and as we can see here, I am slumped over my handlebars, collapsed as the adrenaline starts to wear off, and I can feel the sickness starting to set in. So I get off the bike here, you don't see it, but you'll get to hear these sound effects. So there you have it, I've just emptied the contents of my stomach into my garden patio. Very rare that I'm sick after a race. I have to say I didn't feel 100%, I think I was a little bit ill, but that just shows you how deep we went there to get the win. 14 watts per kilo, thereabouts for 15 seconds. There you go guys, I hope you enjoyed that one. I'm going to hand myself back over to myself on the bike to give you my final thoughts.
Well guys, that's probably why you shouldn't race when you're sick. Finish the race. Adrenaline wore off. I've just been sick in my garden 4 times in a row. Wasn't that hard, was it? We certainly emptied the tank on that one. So I hope you enjoyed that quick blast around the fan flats of Richmond. Thank you as always for joining me. Hope you enjoyed it. Look forward to catching you on the next one. As always, like, comment, most importantly subscribe. And remember, race fast, ride hard, and remember that you are appreciated.